get the hang of it. Gondor calls for aid, and the Gwynnes shall answer. But they have the cave troll. Elves, orcs, halflings, lend us your ears. Welcome to another video on the Brothers Gwynne channel. Today we will be covering the Silmarillion. Now, before we get into a chat about it and I say why you should read the Silmarillion, I just want to say people out there have said everything that is brilliant about the Silmarillion. I'm not going to be able to say it as well. I'm not going to be able to do Tolkien's work justice. But this is just because I love it so much and I really wanted to read it soon. I haven't actually read the Silmarillion, which I know, awful of me. I did try. I did read the first chapter and I was kind of mind blown. I don't want to. But we will talk about that during this video. But I definitely will read it this year, and I'm very excited to do so. And I'm also excited to listen to William's passionate talk about why I should be reading it and why many more people should be reading the Silmarillion. Before we get into the salted pork of this review, I just want to give a bit of the premise of the Silmarillion in case some people don't know. So the Silmarillion is set previous to the events of Lord of the Rings, and it explains the events of the First and Second Ages. Also, Tolkien actually wrote the Silmarillion before he conceived the idea of The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, and he actually wrote many of the stories separately whilst he was serving in World War One. What I've seen on the internet is how it shows J.K. Rowling, and it says, I've created an amazing world, let me try and figure out a language for it. And then it says, Tolkien, I've created an amazing language, let me create a world for it. Let's write a book for it. So what I'm going to do as a non-reader of the Silmarillion, I'm going to ask William a few questions about what I'm most interested to hear about it, to see how he responds, how he will actually sell this book to me. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what you say, Will. So Will, let's kick off. Now the Silmarillion, is it just the bare bones of a history? So that is I'd say a yes and no. The Silmarillion, it tells the history of Middle-earth, its origins. So the origins of the world as a whole, made by Ilúvatar, but also the origins of each of the races. But it isn't just that. Whilst it does tell the tale of the history, it's in a compelling way that it includes some of the most heartbreaking, heartwarming stories that I have ever read. So whilst it may be framed as a historical perspective, it doesn't take away from any of the story. So it doesn't read like the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, where it's like, this year we had a major storm. This year we had no crops. Not quite, no. It's, as I said, it's a lot more compelling, and Tolkien, I think even people who don't quite click with his prose agree that he is a genius in the way that he writes. And as someone who does look at his prose, I completely agree. And it is much more than just, this event happened, then this event. It links them all together, and you just see that Tolkien has such a passion for the world he's created. I mean, he wrote 4 or 5 languages for it. He dedicated so many years to creating this fully fleshed out world that I would argue that fantasy or no genre has seen since. So is this like a collection of short stories, basically? Again, a yes and no. So short stories in the sense that he did write most of them one by one, but they are all tied together and they're in chronological order, going through the First and Second Ages. Okay. Whilst each story, they focus on many different perspectives and different characters, but they are all very tied together in that they are the main events of Middle-earth. So I've seen lots of different books out there talking about how different stories that Tolkien's written, and I don't know whether they're in the Silmarillion or not. But for example, you've got Beren and Luthien. That's published as a book on its own. Is that inside the Silmarillion, or is that something completely different? Yes. So there are many tales. The Children of Hurin and Beren and Luthien are 2 that have been published separately, but they are also in the Silmarillion. So they have been expanded with notes from Christopher Tolkien. When it's just that story on its own, but they are also in the Silmarillion because those stories do take place in the First and Second Ages. Now, as I just mentioned Beren and Luthien, I do just want to read a quick quote. Among the tales of sorrow and of ruin that came down to us from the darkness of those days, there are yet some in which, amid weeping, there is joy, and under the shadow of death, light that endures.
And of these histories, most fair still in the ears of the elves is the tale of Beren and Luthien.
So obviously listening to that quote, it feels like it might be written more as a story rather than a simple history, which I've seen lots of people say that the Silmarillion actually is.
Oh, it definitely is. It's like you're writing like an autobiography. He doesn't write it as if he is there, but it's told as if he's a historian who's really engaging with these stories. Yeah. And it is, as I said, it's so compelling. I cried so many times during these stories, Beren and Luthien in particular, and the Children of Hurin. I think everyone who's read the Silmarillion will agree you can't get much more heartbreaking than it. But even though it does sound incredibly sad in that manner, it gives you every single emotion that you can think of. I remember the ride of Fingolfin. Oh my word! I mean,
it sounds cool, but
thing is, you'll watch this again when you have read the Silmarillion, and it will click. That ride, that sequence of events. Oh my word! It just made you feel just in awe, and you're just like, wow. I think the main thing to take away is that Lord of the Rings is epic, isn't it? Epic fantasy, epic in every single way, isn't it? Okay, well,
it made epic fantasy.
In comparison to the Silmarillion, whilst the Lord of the Rings is incredible, and I don't have a preference over the Silmarillion or Lord of the Rings. In the epic scale, Lord of the Rings is about there, and the Silmarillion's about there, because it has everything that's in Lord of the Rings, but it has Sauron's master, Morgoth, who's the main evil figure in the Silmarillion, and you have heroes who are far and beyond powerful than the figures that you see in Lord of the Rings. And this is one of the things that I love about the Silmarillion, that Tolkien didn't just put all his eggs in one basket for Lord of the Rings. This is a fully fleshed out tale that it's authentic in that way, isn't it? Because we don't see that everything in the modern day is the greatest of all time, do we?
Yeah.
There's tales like we look at King Arthur, we look at Robin Hood, and these are tales that have lasted through millennium and that we still love and hearken to today.
Right, Will, I have two major questions.
Okay.
These are probably the most important. Firstly, are there Balrogs?
Okay. Plural. Yes.
Good answer. And secondly, this is probably the most important one. Is Glorfindel in it?
Glorfindel, isn't it? We weirdly, we've had a bit of an obsession with Glorfindel for some weird reason. I think it's Warhammer.
No, Battle for Middle Earth too.
Oh, of course.
The guy is just awesome.
Glorfindel is so cool, and he is in the Silmarillion.
So obviously we have the different cultures within Lord of the Rings, like the Rohirrim, the Easterlings, the Haradrim. Are they the same cultures? Do you see the similar ones? Do you see expansions of maybe the Easterlings that we don't actually see that much of in the Lord of the Rings? Or are they whole new ones?
Okay, so you have a whole variety. They are very different because the actual map of Middle-earth is completely different. There's natural disasters, and there's events that reshape the world. So Middle-earth looks nothing like the map you see in Lord of the Rings in the Silmarillion. And it is effectively, instead of being the Age of Man, it is the Age of the Elves. And it's not as clear-cut as the Age of Man, Age of Elves. They all intermingle. But the first age is mostly about the tales of the elves. And the Silmarillion is actually a necklace of jewels made by an elf. And they are called the Silmarils.
Yeah, okay.
So that is why it's called the Silmarillion. It's about the tales that revolve around this necklace.
Oh, so okay, that makes sense from what I've heard about Beren and Luthien.
Oh,
I'm with you there. So obviously Lord of the Rings is in the Third Age, and that starts with Sauron being defeated. Is the Second Age like the Age of Men? Is this First Age like the Age of Elves? Is it that clear cut?
It's not that clear cut, so I won't say when the Second Age begins because it might be a bit of a spoiler to those who haven't read the Silmarillion yet. But it does become a bit more about men, especially about the Men of Numenor. So yeah. So Isildur and Aragorn's long
Men of the North.
Yes, so his ancestors.
Yeah.
And the Numenorans were founded by Elrond's brother.
So are the Dunedain in it more?
So at this point they are not called the Dunedain, but basically the children of Hurin, they actually live as long as the Dunedain would, and they are similar, but they are not called the Dunedain at this point because if you think in real life the name of societies and cultures change, don't they?
Yeah.
And it's the exact same in this.
Okay. What would you say is lacking from the Silmarillion? Is there anything missing? Do you feel like after you've read it, I wish I found more out about this? Is there a cliffhanger?
Okay, well, there is nothing that is left unsaid. You have every single bit of information.
Okay.
I think that what people could say is that the beginning is a bit hard to get past because it is a summary of how the world is founded. There's a lot of names and it can be a bit confusing. But I beg you, please push past that initial phase and you get into the best parts of the Silmarillion, in my opinion.
Cool.
So instead of anything being lacking, I'd say there's just a bit... it's quite a dense beginning.
Right.
And I'd say there's nothing missing. You may want a bit more of an emotional input at times, but you really do get that because the tales on their own, they don't need you to be from the first person perspective or from the thoughts of a figure. Right,
thank you, Will, for telling me all about the Silmarillion. Thank you, Mr. Cave Troll, as well. I really enjoyed finding out a bit more about the Silmarillion, having some questions answered, rather than being afraid of Googling things because you always feel like that you're worried that there's going to be some spoilers on there, don't you? Especially if I Google is Glorfindel in it and it says something bad happens to him. Obviously, I don't think he dies, but hey ho. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading the Silmarillion this year. I'm sure once I do that, we will put another video out about what we both thought of it together. Obviously, maybe we can do a spoiler chat about it. Obviously, we're afraid to mention spoilers in this one, but thank you, Will. And let us know in the comments below if you've read the Silmarillion. What do you think of it? Does it hold up to Lord of the Rings? That kind of thing. Please let us know.
Yes, it does.
Until we see you next time, stay safe from the Brothers Gwynne.
The Brothers Gwynne.
Truth and courage.
Truth and courage.